So we're doing a couple of open weeks, and tonight I thought we would talk about breaking the bondage of right fighting. You ever heard of right fighting? Do you know somebody in your life who, no matter what it is we're talking about, they got to get the last word every time? Do you know that person? They got to get the last word every time. I mean, like, we all know people that are going to experience this, right? And a lot of that comes from stuff that we probably won't talk about tonight, but it comes from a depth of fear that I'm not going to be valued, I'm not going to be important, I'm not going to be heard, and I've always got to find a way to defend myself. And so Vicky, who's one of our therapists, taught me something very valuable in one of our talks, and she goes, one of the best things you can possibly say to somebody when they're in the middle of something like that is, you might be right. Like, she told me that, and I realized after a while, like, that had been happening to me for a while. She was saying that to me, and I realized that I was being somehow like turned around a little bit, kind of like a top. And I thought when she said to me, I might be right, I'm like, yeah. She finally agrees with me. It's like, that was probably rarely true. I'm just telling you that was rarely true. But if she goes, well, Mark, the thing is, what I'm saying though is not just that you might be right, Slick. I'm also telling you it's also equally true that you might be wrong. And I'm like, oh, that was convenient. So like, think about that for a minute. If somebody has that kind of a posture, they're probably not a full-on right fighter. So here's a good definition of right fighting. A right fighter is someone who gets overly emotional or angry when people do not agree with them in their opinions or beliefs. A right fighter is someone who insists on having the last word in an argument or refuses to back down no matter what. Sean Byler, PhD in psychology. What is a right fighter? A right fighter is someone who struggles to win arguments even if they doubt their own view. Have you ever met somebody like that? They work to win arguments even if they doubt their own view. A right fighter is somebody who gets overly emotional or angry when people do not agree with them and their opinions or beliefs. A right fighter is somebody who insists on having the last word in an argument or refuses to back down no matter what. A right fighter is someone who gets overly emotional or angry when people do not agree with them and their opinions and or their beliefs. So does anybody here, you don't have to raise your hand, you're not gonna, but does anybody here see themselves in anything like that? Like, do you think do you feel a deep need when someone's in the middle of a conversation with you? Yeah, there we go. There we go, right there. It's gonna probably turn into a situation where in order for you to have your opinion validated, right, they gotta be wrong. Like, that's the way it's gotta be. There can only be a winner. What? Now I'm getting heckled. There can only be a winner. There can only be a winner and a loser. It's got to be like everything about those conversations with someone who's in a right fighting place is that, it's got to take me to a place of pretty much polar opposites. If I say black, you say white. If I say green, you say red. If I say whatever the spectrum on the color is the opposite, that's what I'm going to do. If I say it's early, you say it's late. If I say it's cold, which I would say that. If I say it's cold, you say it's hot, it's warm. If I say it's almost summer, you're like, no, it's still definitely winter. And that's just kind of how it goes. Like, everything about the conversation is going to be absolutely polarized. Do you find yourself trying to win pretty much every argument? Do people ask you this question? Why is it that no matter what, you almost always have to be right? Why is it that you almost always have to be right? Like, if you wanted to get to a deeper question is, what are you defending? And the still deeper question is, why has power in what you say, why has power become preeminent or predominant in your life? Why has power become so important? And why is power in a lot of ways? Why is you winning and gaining that sense of power over somebody else? Why has that taken front and center stage for you? And why has it become critical? And why is that actually your identity? You know, like 99 out of 100 times, if I'm talking to somebody about, you know, opportunities for healing, opportunities for growth, opportunities for recovery, it seems like 99 out of 100 times at first blush, someone's gonna say to me, you know what, like, thank you so much for the information. But I mean, and then they're sort of like, when I look in their eyes, they're basically kind of like flipping me off. I mean, you know, it's like, that's how it's gonna go. And it's like, you're not, you know, I don't get people that kind of start talking about recovery, treatment, whatever it's about. I don't really get people, oh my God, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you introduced the fact that I'm gonna go through this period of my life where I'm gonna be unbelievably uncomfortable. Everything about me is about to be challenged. Thank you so much. Like, I don't think most, we have some therapists in the room. I don't think most therapists have that happen. Do you? Do you see people just like falling all over themselves, thanking you so much for digging into their life? I mean, and just exposing stuff that's painful and tough? Probably not. Probably not. The person that's the right fighter gets overly emotional with that kind of a challenge. Overly emotional when people don't agree with them. Overly emotional when people disagree with their opinions, or even what they think are their core beliefs. I say that because, like, in a lot of ways, a right fighter has one major core belief. And that one major core belief is if I don't stick up for myself, if I don't validate my opinions and my feelings, you know, nobody else is going to. I have to do that because if I don't do that, I'm gonna get kind of trampled. I mean, something's gonna happen. Like there isn't that place of doing like Vicky going, you know, you might be right. It's like, yeah, I could be right, but I could also not be right, you know. But in this case of a right fighter, that's a crucial fact. You know, that is a crucial, absolute fact that it's gotta happen. It's gotta happen now. I've gotta be in this position where I have that kind of a way to kind of manage the conversation and get to the end. And at the end, it's got to involve winning. Does conflict you engage in typically end with you having the last word, but in the end of the conversation, nobody actually feels validated or satisfied? You know, like, you know, some people, you can sit with somebody. I have several friends like this. I mean, you can sit with somebody for 2 hours, make your point, create what you think is right and healthy about A, B, C, D, or E, state your point, clarify your point, get all that way, and then they're gonna sit there and they're gonna really do an excellent job of listening to you. They're gonna hear you all the way out, and they're gonna respect what you're saying, and they're masterful at this, and they will never have actually agreed with you, which can be oh so frustrating if you're a right fighter, because your goal is not only for you to state your claim on what is what, and why is why, and what opinion is the right opinion to have, but also it's gonna become critical that you convince everybody else in the room. That's like a really big deal. People that are right fighters in sales in this generation are really gonna fail miserably. Like, that's just not gonna go well, because we don't have people in our culture that are in a position to go, you know, they wanna be dominated now, they wanna be oversold, people want information, they want clarity, and they wanna be able to have this keen opportunity to be respected, and secondly, to make their own decision. You know, like, that is, anybody that's in sales can tell you exactly what I'm telling you, that the deal that you're gonna overwhelm somebody with information, you're gonna blow somebody out the door, you're gonna find a way to manipulate somebody into an outcome. Like, I don't know anybody that's in sales that's effective that wants to do that. That may have been true 15 or 20 years ago. It is not true in any way, shape, or form now. You gotta give people the opportunity to get to their own place at their own time, make their own decisions with their own information, with this lovely thing called what? Truth. Just tell people the truth. The right fighter isn't gonna be able to do it. The right fighter is going to do anything they have to do to be able to get to a place of managing, manipulating an outcome or a truth, whether it's true what they're saying or not. It's got to be this way. It's got to be this way right now. I've got to be the one that's declaring it, and you've got to do what I want you to do, the way I want you to do it, and when I want you to do it. Do arguments in your life or with somebody that you know, do they engage you in such a way that you usually escalate to shouting and anger? Is that something that's kind of the norm? If that's going on with you, if you find yourself defending yourself at that level or always getting in those kind of exchanges, it is entirely possible you're dealing with someone who's a right fighter. And this also comes from Sean Byler, PhD psychology. Here's what he says. The right fighter's low self-esteem, ironically, which if you're with that person, you're like, man, they're intense, they're powerful, they're strong-willed, they're all of that. Listen to what he's saying. The right fighter's low self-esteem level, ironically, steals the potential for strong self-esteem in others. Like, I have low self-esteem, let's say, and so in order for me to get you to have equally low or lower self-esteem, I've got to like beat you down with all kinds of information or opinions or even intensity. I've got to be able to do that. I've got to be able to find a way to prove you wrong so that I can elevate what I believe my weakened opinion or point of view is. Do you get that? Like, I've got to be able to push down where you are and what you're thinking in order for me to elevate for myself a weak position that I already have right now. You know, as opposed to going, like one of the most freeing things to sell stuff that I've ever experienced in my life is kind of like you're sitting there in a sales meeting and someone asks you a really good question. And you go, you know, I don't really have the answer to that, man. I don't know that. Like, I'm going to try to find that out for you, and I'm going to try to do some work, and I want to come back and talk to you in a couple of days about that. Like, generally, when we first started with that kind of an approach, that just startled people. You remember that? Like, right, left, and sideways. Like, well, wait, he's selling. Why doesn't he know what his product is supposed to do? Why can't he guarantee how this is supposed to be? It's like something is really healthy and important and creative about saying, you know, I don't know. Usually really good things come out of that. When we're so polarized that I know A and you know B, and that's the way we're going to do it, and I'm defending A and you're defending B, we're never going to get to a C. We're never going to be able to get to anything creative because I'm sitting at A and you're sitting at B. And we're at opposite ends of the spectrum. It's like night and day. If, however, everybody's open to learning something entirely different and entirely new, usually really good things are going to happen. I mean, like, it's just fascinating watching that occur. Like, people expect you, in a lot of cases, people that have, I don't know, some experience with sales, they expect you from the old school to go, yeah, this is what we got to do, this is how we got to do it, and I'm actually selling you on a position. Well, now, it's very refreshing. The most important thing you can possibly do with somebody is go, we're here to really improve your overall sense of what your product is, your overall sense of what your service is, your overall sense about how to communicate that, your overall sense of what integrity is all about. How am I going to talk to people about that? And I mean, you stand there and you stay open to all ideas, all comers. You usually get a tremendous amount of creative input that way. Because why? Because people that are owning their business, people that are working their company, people that are working their products, guess what? They know their stuff a lot better than you do. We know ourselves a lot better than we would like to admit. We know what our insecurities are. We know where we don't have strengths. It's very refreshing to go, you know what? I don't know, man. I don't really have that down. You know, the hardest part of the steps for me, really, I don't say it's not the fourth step. The fourth step's relatively straightforward. Put down all the crap you did, put down all the stuff you think, put down all the stuff you're feeling, put down all your innards, just get on with it, man, and start sharing it with somebody else. The hardest thing to do for me was lovely step one. I'm powerless over what is happening to me right here. I do not, that's another way of saying, if I could have figured out this whole recovery thing on my own, I would have done it. That's truth. If I could have figured out a way not to go to Al-Anon, not to go to any AA stuff, not to do that, and I could have done it on my own, it would have been good. I would have liked that. The fact of the matter is, I was powerless. The fact of the matter is, I could not do this on my own. The fact of the matter is, I have a vulnerability and a weakness here, and that weakness and vulnerability is going to be met one single way, whether I realize it or not. And that one single way is going to be the more that Jesus intervenes in my life, the more that I'm willing to let Jesus love me, the more that I'm willing to let Jesus work on me, the healthier I'm going to get. Amen? And the least amount of time I'm willing to let him do that, the more unhealthy I'm going to become. And that's also true. Right-fighting people simply cannot grow confident children. That's hard to hear. The low self-esteem a right-fighting parent manifests steals the potential for strong esteem in children. In other words, if I am forever telling my children what like one of the most refreshing things for me as a parent, it startled both of my kids to no end. One of the most refreshing things, honestly, for me as a parent, didn't know it at the time, is when you finally get to a point with your kids where you're in every way, unless you're lying to yourself, you're completely busted, right? And you're like, yeah, here's the thing, honey. When I told you this or that or whatever, I completely jacked that up. Like everything I was saying to you was just flat wrong. I had no business talking to you about that. It was way out of whack. This is how it got out of whack. And I want you to understand what was happening with me and how I got there, so you know as much as you possibly can. I'll be as honest with you as I possibly can. But in the end, only one piece of business will satisfy what is happening between you and I, if there's going to be some real integrity. And the one piece of business that's going to work between you and I is I've got to be able to say to you, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and I want to ask you if you'll forgive me. Like, how powerful is that? I mean, that ends basically every power conversation between a parent and a child. Now, if you have a smarty little child, they may go, you're right, Dad, you really did screw up, which if you know daughter number 2, like in my life, you know that's happened 7 billion times. But it was worth it every time, it really was. You know, because at least no matter what else happens, she knows my heart. She knows that I'm giving to the honest to God, true piece of how much I love her. That I love her enough to tell her the truth and to tell her, you know, when all this happened, I was just wrong. As convinced as I might have been that I was absolutely right, the fact of the matter is, I was just wrong. And that is an unbelievable change that will occur with esteem levels of your child. If you have children, that will be a game changer if you get to a point of that. Like, I think what we kind of think as parents sometimes, which is good recovery 101, is we kind of think, well, I mean, if we let go of power, it's going to put us in a weakened state. Step 1 says what to that? That's the point. Like, we get the point, like that is the point of step 1. We are powerless over A, B, C, D, and E. We do not have power over that. We cannot master that. We're not the champions of that. We don't know more than anybody else does. We're not the king of the hill. We're none of that. We're just beginners. We're at a place where God is about to teach us something, and we need him to do it. A right-fighting parent is particularly harmful to children. This is important because the child is made to feel like the loser and that his or her opinions are not valid or even important. Quite often, right fighters inadvertently create a lonely world for themselves that is filled with perceived versus real betrayals. If you don't pay attention to me, you're betraying me. If you disagree with me, you're betraying me. I mean, sure, there are critical points where it's like someone's going to run out in front of the proverbial car and you got to stop them from doing that. But there aren't honestly a whole lot of those kinds of exchanges where people in our lives are in that kind of imminent danger? And if they are, you're going to know it, and it all makes sense. But I think sometimes for us, we use imminent danger to kind of avoid an honest exchange, don't we? We use imminent danger because we want to be able to believe that they need to be able to honor and respect our opinion about something or our decision about something. And what this Sean guy is saying is, the important piece here is we got to learn to trust our instincts. We got to learn to trust our truth. We got to learn to trust, how do we really ascertain what imminent danger is? How do we understand what loving access is into somebody's life over and against domination? Since right fighters cannot possibly be right all the time, they are searching for self-esteem wherever it cannot be found. Since right fighters cannot possibly be right all the time, they are searching for self-esteem where it cannot ever be found. Right fighting parents simply cannot grow confident children. The low self-esteem a right fighting parent manifests steals the potential for strong self-esteem in their children. One of the best questions to ask somebody who's in that frantic position where they're just trying to disprove what you think because they believe they need to disprove what you think in order to prove or validate what they think or what they feel, is if we can get that conversation to a feeling level, if we can get it to a feeling level or a feeling conversation, it kind of goes like this. Can you tell me why you're feeling the way you're feeling right now? It's not the way I'm thinking, right? It's the way I'm feeling. Can you tell me the way you're feeling right now? Can you tell me how you're feeling right now? Even better question, do you feel like I'm threatening you right now? Do you feel that way? And then they go, yeah, I really do feel that way. This is why I feel that way. It really takes you to a very, very different place. Someone who's really prone to right fighting, that's going to be significantly disarming to ask that question. Can you tell me what you're feeling right now? Because they're in their thoughts and they're in their head and they're trying to prove the next point. And you want to know, can you tell me what you're feeling like? What's your heart saying to you right now? How are you doing right now? Another question would be what do you think would happen in this conversation if what you're trying to prove to me couldn't be proved? What do you think would happen? Would the world come to an end? Would the world cave in on you? What would happen? Would you be less of a person? Would it be devastating for you? When you get to that conversation about what's happening emotionally, you can see right where it's really going to be a significant game changer in that conversation. Sometimes one of the best things to do with someone who's a right fighter is exactly what Vicky's doing, teaches me, which is, you go, well, you might be right. And you kind of end the conversation there and you just give somebody the valid, authentic opportunity to start to learn. Maybe they'll learn, maybe they won't. What are some opportunities for breaking the bondage of right fighting? One would be listen to the other person. And I want you to think about a person that you know in your life that is like this. Listen to the other person to hear them and to hear everything they're saying to you, not in order to develop a comeback, right? Number two, pay direct attention to the power of fear that is most likely oozing out of the other person when they're expressing themselves, and try to pay attention to what they're actually most afraid of. One of the ways you're going to get there again is by asking the question, if I were to ask you, what are you actually most afraid of right now? What are you most afraid of? What would they say to you? Maybe they would just blow you off. Maybe they would just keep happening. I don't know. But you have an opportunity to be able to hear them at a whole different level of, if we take away your logic and we take away your reasoning and we take away your perception that you need to have all the power in the room, what do you think would happen if I ask you that question of, what are you most afraid of? if you take a hard look at what inside of you is unloved, and you take a hard look at what inside of you feel to be even unlovable, that's going to be a significant inroad perhaps into what's happening to somebody else. One of the reasons somebody is fighting so hard to make their point so well, and they're so sure of why they need to be right, is because it's unacceptable and impossible that they could be wrong or have a growth point. And the reason they feel that way is because someone taught them somewhere along the way that in order for you to be validated and in order for you to be of significant value or size to somebody else, emotional size, you gotta be able to prove your point. You gotta be able to make your point. You gotta be able to win. And winning means there's a winner and a loser. There's not a mutuality. There's not really a growth place. There's gotta be a winner and a loser. Opposite sides of the spectrum, polarization has gotta be in play. You will never, in my lifetime, I have never seen or witnessed any higher level of polarization than we're experiencing in this country right now. I just haven't seen it. I think it's gonna be a thing. I think it's gonna be an ongoing problem for us to try to figure out, can we really hear each other? Can we really respect each other? Can we really love each other and realize that, like God actually made this person and this person. We completely disagree with them at every level. But you know what? You don't like this, but God made them. Come over here. They are completely different from me. We disagree with them at every single level. But you know what? God made them. Like, it's very difficult to get to that place where you have a respect of person. You have respect of a person that God made as a spiritual being, that God infused with life, that God infused with his love. You have a much harder time getting to a place of going, well, I completely disrespect your opinion. And now what it goes to, if you're a right fighter, is in order for me to completely disrespect your opinion, I got to completely disrespect you. Because that's what I got to do, because I can't validate your opinion and not validate you. So if I invalidate your opinion, well, then I get to invalidate you. Take a hard look at what's unloved in you. Begin to go to yourself, some of the basic unmet needs that all of us have: security, value, worth, all the good things. Is it true that this person that's the right fighter, are they like right there with you? Are they right there with you? Is some of the basic stuff that goes on with basic human emotional needs, is that missing? Is that unfulfilled? Is that not happening inside of this person? If you're a Christian, you want to hear something bizarre? If you're a Christian, while they're doing all that, having all that right fighting stuff, what you could be doing is praying for them. There's a thought, like, what would happen if we decided, I'm gonna get Jesus in the middle of this conversation. I'm gonna see what Jesus can do. Trust me, it'll be more creative than anything you can do or anything your right fighter friend can do. It'll be nothing like what you expected, right? I just see that all the time. When you go into a conversation with somebody and you're thinking they're gonna say this and you're gonna do this and this is gonna happen, man, when you bring Jesus in the room, it is an entirely different outcome. Reason for that is it's filled with the Spirit of God, the Spirit of healing, the Spirit of resurrection, the Spirit of freedom, power, and truth. That's honestly what all these 12 steps are about. Take a look at what you're defending and ask yourself, can your position of what you're defending stand there all by itself without you having to defend it at all? Can it stand there on its own merit? Is it valid on its own merit? Or does it have to be this thing of, you gotta be down for me to be up? I gotta sublimate you in order to be lifted up. I gotta devalue you in order to see value in myself and my own position. Is learning from another person, even if you could not possibly disagree with them more. If you could not possibly disagree with them more, is learning agreement? Does it mean you have to agree? Or do we get back to, you might be right. I'll give that some thought. I'll think that through. I respect you enough to be able to hear what you're actually saying to me. How much how much conflict do you think we could solve in this world in just one little section of Knoxville if we did this for a while? If we just said, you know what, I respect your point of view, but I really don't agree with you, but I respect your point of view. I respect it because I respect you as a person. Is Jesus really how I know myself? Is that true? Is Jesus really my rock and my salvation? Is Jesus my warrior? Yes or no? If Jesus is my warrior, I am ultimately loved, I am ultimately accepted, and I am ultimately free. So I want to read you something from Zephaniah. This is what it says. Those who are left will be lowly and humble, for it is they who trust in the name of the Lord. The remnant of Israel will do no wrong. They will never tell lies or deceive one another. And I would add, why is that? Because they don't need to. They will eat and sleep in safety, and no one will make them afraid. Sing, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O Israel. Be glad and rejoice with all your heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. For the Lord will remove his hand of judgment and will disperse the armies of your enemy. And the Lord himself, the King of Israel, is going to live among you. At last your troubles will be over, and you will never again fear disaster. That there is some hope. Amen. That there is some creativity. That there is the way that Jesus designed us and loved us to be. Let's pray. Sweet Jesus, we thank you for this time and for this opportunity to be with you. We thank you for teaching us what it means to be not afraid of each other, and not afraid of what we think, and not afraid of what we feel, and not afraid, Lord, of being able to stand here and disagree and figure out what it's like to love each other. Because that's something, Lord, that we see every day. It doesn't, for most of the world right now, it isn't going well. We pray for that. In your sweet name, amen.